today is Wednesday, January 22nd, 2020. I'm sitting here with Steve Sintes. Do we have your permission to use your audio and visual?
Absolutely.
Thank you. So our first question, when did the first Sintes move to New Orleans?
God, I'm not sure about that, because just recently I found out about my great-great-grandfather, and I know he was already here, so I guess that you'd probably have to find out from my father or my mother. I think my Aunt Judy's a family historian, and she could probably, should be the one who could probably tell you exactly what year that happened, because she mapped out our whole family history.
Okay. I know the last interview, Lawrence had said his father had started the business?
Correct. He started the business, and I believe it was like in 57, 1957.
A while ago.
Correct,
Has many things changed? Have they stayed the same?
Well, no, I have pictures of the boatyard before we were even connected to the park. It was just a small crane and enough room for maybe 3 boats. Now, I think on land I can maybe pick up 13 boats total, kind of 3 trailers I have. And we have a woodshed that we got after Hurricane Betsy. All the boathouses were destroyed, and my father and grandfather gathered all the raw material that was all the scrap material and built the woodshed. So we got a woodshed after Hurricane Betsy. And then I have pictures before we were even touching the park. And now, like where the park, the dock runs all the way into the park, where the land was filled all the way to the park. And I have boats with trailers on it there, so I have room on that side of the yard for 3 more boats than we used to have like in the 50s when the yard was built. So it has grown a lot. Then my father in the 80s started a marine distributing business and built a concrete slab with a big building that we used to paint boats inside the building. Then as the distributing business grew, we used that as a storage building for our paint and fairing compound. We started selling paint and fairing compound, and the distributing business, Sintes Marine, grew into a pretty profitable thing. And then we also started a marine store. And my father always wanted to be a shoe salesman. So the store, he started selling shoes too. And then we grew into a boutique upstairs. So from the boatyard, we kind of grew into 3 different directions, which was kind of interesting, to see that my father's dream of being a shoe salesman turned into getting a boutique besides a supply store. So I guess my grandfather's dream of having a boatyard grew. And at one point, we even had a boatyard in Mississippi that my grandfather built. And I have pictures of that, and I think the Copacabana Casino eventually bought the property that's on. But we were having trouble, keeping 2 boatyards running, and the IRS threatened to shut us down because we weren't paying taxes. And my father told them, if you shut me down, I won't be able to pay you. So they gave us a reprieve, and my father paid them back, and I guess the rest of it was kind of history as to what we've built now.
It's a very long history. I didn't even know y'all had a boutique.
Yeah, we got a boutique upstairs. Now, since Katrina, it don't do as well because the boat population was kind of the 3rd. But I'm sure once the marina's finished being built, we'll get busy back in the boutique. And people still do come shop here. And like when a lot of our customers would go out of town, they'd come to the boutique after and say, "Oh, I want to get gifts from my friends." We just tell them we got this from Florida because we had stuff from all over the country in there. So depending on where you wanted to say you went, you could get stuff from our boutique to fill your needs.
I like that. Have y'all seen any change in the neighborhood since y'all have been there?
I guess it's changed on a regular basis. I know like every winter seafood restaurants would catch on fire. And I don't really know why, but as a kid, my grandmother's house and our woodshed was across the street from where the boatyard is now. And that later became my uncle's boat building property. But I'd stay there a lot, and I'd always hear like carrying on and people screaming all night long. So West End at one point was the equivalent of like the French Quarter. There was a lot of partying and drinking going on. But as a kid, I didn't know that. Then when I grew up in my teen years, I remember hanging out there and sleeping like in one of the sheds at work and just going to work the next morning after staying out at West End all night long. So it was a pretty popular place as far as like similar to the French Quarter, Bourbon Street. And then there was some offshore boat races, and for the offshore boat races, there'd be parades and all. So I guess in my lifetime, around the time of the Popeyes offshore boat races out there, and our West End was peaking in our lifetime. It was like a landmark. My friends from school would come visit me out here, and it's like, "Oh, I know why you like it out here." There's girls, and there's people, and there's activity, hot rods, motorbikes. Everybody was just kind of a place to cruise and stuff. Then on weekends, sometimes like Orange County Chapel would have bike shows. That have Hawaiian Tropic swimsuit contests at the restaurants out there and stuff. So it got to be quite a place till Katrina came. And then when Katrina came, it just kind of wiped all the restaurants out. I mean, when you see what it looks like now, you know, there were like 7 restaurants on the water, now there's nothing. So yeah, I guess I've seen a lot of change. And what I remember, my grandfather had wrote diaries of him building the boatyard. And my family gave them to me and I'd read them. In fact, I think he was 68 when he died. And so this year I've been reading, 58 when he died. So this year I've been reading what he was doing when he was my age, because he was 58 and I'm 58. And it was just interesting to see what he did to build the boatyard. But after Katrina, I knew what to do because I had read how he did it. And what was interesting, I always say, I wonder what it was like when he did this. I wonder how he built the dock. I wonder how he did that. Well, after Katrina, I had to rebuild the dock. And the city wasn't open or anything, so we just kind of gathered all the scrap wood from the neighborhood, telephone poles that fell down and stuff, we'd cut them and we drove them, we made a water jet system and used my crane to drive them in the water. But it took 2 weeks to get my crane working and probably a month to get the yard cleaned up enough to rebuild the dock. So it's like from October to December, we rebuilt the boatyard after Katrina to what it is now. And I actually made the dock a little bigger and did some other things that I just needed to do to get back in business. And then I remember like I had a list of 60 boats because while I'm waiting for West End to open up, I'd always go where Sid Marsh used to be and look over the wall, and people would show up there every day asking if I was going back in business, and I would just take their names. So I had a list of 60 boats to work on, and I just did a bunch of quotes, and it was like for 3 years, it was like bring your boat in and get it fixed. So it did kind of change the way I did business for a while. Then when I went back to like doing routine maintenance and having to get a job out in a week, I didn't know how to do that again. I had to retrain myself to like, okay, now I got to do a quote in the week and get a boat out in the week instead of going to one of the 60 quotes I did and picking. And what I remember too about that time was people would come in and I'd be like, well, you're on the list, you know, you're number 10 on the list. Well, you wait for those 10 people to settle their claim. I have money from the insurance company. Okay, 30% deposit and we'll start tomorrow. So that kind of put us back on the map. But then some of my customers were like, I've worked for you, I've been a customer for 20 years and you never asked for a deposit. Look at my shop, man, I don't have any money in the bank. You know, I need your deposit to keep going. So people, okay, I understand, you know. So it was kind of interesting seeing how easy we had it before Katrina versus after Katrina. We really had to work hard. We had to ask people for money up front. And some people who dealt with me for a long time were kind of upset about it. But once I explained to them my situation, they understood. So it was interesting. I always wanted to know what it was like for my grandfather. And I guess Katrina kind of gave it to me, you know, gave me the chance to find that out. But also the fact that I read how his life was. And it was interesting gathering all the materials and doing the things he did and finding out, you know, what his life was like. So I felt like Katrina was kind of a blessing for me in that respect.
I really, when we saw those diaries and like you started writing at the same time, that was really cool.
Right, well, I think I sent you a picture last Saturday, and one of my cousins who didn't know about this sent me that picture. It was a picture of me, my grandfather, and 2 of my other cousins. And I was 7 in the picture, and my grandfather was 58 in the picture, and that was 6 months before he died. That was the December before he died, and I just thought that was kind of interesting that she didn't know anything about this. So I sent her the video you sent me and told her what was going on. And so since then, I got in touch with my Aunt Barbara, who also sent me a picture of the shop that day from like the 40s. There's cars at least from the 40s in the picture. You know, the picture might have been from the 50s, but it was a shop across the street, our original storefront. And I thought that was interesting that they didn't know about this. And the Saturday that I sent you those pictures, they started sending me pictures of my family history.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
You answered a lot of my questions. So there's been Betsy and Katrina. Why have y'all stayed at the same place?
Well, you can't have a boatyard unless you're on the waterfront. And being out there, you just have to expect you're going to get flooded. Just like if you live up north, you're going to get snowstorms. If you live in California, you're going to get earthquakes. So we've just stayed out there because I guess we don't know better. We don't know anything else. But I do love the location. I love the fact that I get to go out there, and it's kind of like going to your own special island. I think the reason we stayed there is we have a name there, we have a reputation, and people come there because they know we'll give them good quality work, and it's kind of hard to leave, you know. And then whenever I feel like I'm not accomplishing anything, I'll ride my bike in the harbor and look at the work I've done. and that makes me think, we've got quite a legacy here, and we have something to keep going, and we have a reputation for being on time and working hard. So I think all those things, my grandfather and father kind of drilled into me, and we just love the location and we love the place.
I liked, you took me on a tour of the boatyard and you kept pointing me to boats that y'all fix
Uh-huh.
for the people you know. Why do you think people keep coming to y'all and staying?
I think because we give them a good quality work for their money, and I think we really care about their boats. I know, like, when some of my hardcore customers win awards for their boats, like in races and stuff, they'll tell them, well, this is actually Steve's boat. And I do watch the boats when they go out of town for them and stuff, but it's interesting to think, you're paying me to take care of your boat, but you consider it my boat. And I really love that about my customers that like me that way. They have this boat, Zephyr. It's a 1979 J boat that the owner bought sometime after Katrina to replace their old boat. And when I gave him quotes to replace it, to repair it, he just told me he didn't see it costing that. So he did most of the legwork, and at the time I was going through a divorce. So after I'd work out, I'd go meet him at the boatyard and hang out with him till 2 in the morning. The boat's from the 70s, and it wins about 54 races a year, which is one of the winningest boats in the city. So it's interesting to see he rebuilt a 1979 boat, funded it and all, and it wins more races than any boat in the city. And she's in my yard right now. But one time, one of his partners said, man, he really treats us special. And my friend Dave told Dale, no, he treats everybody this way. And I thought that was interesting because I do have a vested interest in that particular boat, because for my sister's race, he gets a crew together and, it helps with my sister's race every year. And it's just interesting to see that his friend thinks I treat them special, but I treat them just like I treat all my customers. I think that makes a difference. We're kind of like a bar. You don't have to go to the same bar every day. Nobody needs a boat, so boats are a form of entertainment. And if you get treated nice when you come to a place, you want to keep coming back. Plus, I think I love their boats as much as they do, so I think that makes a big difference, and I think they know that.
Talking about your sister's race, how did y'all come up with doing a regatta every year?
My sister was dating one of my customers, and he shot her in the head 6 times. And so the yacht club that she was a member of started a race in her name to raise money for her, for domestic violence. And as time went on, the yacht club got killed for Katrina, so they turned it over to New Orleans Yacht Club. And my customer Gina and this girl Anne Marie invited me to a meeting one night, and they told us that we've been running the race for the past year, but we want to start the Pamela Sintes Memorial Foundation. So they started the foundation, which started sending money to children now that were affected by domestic violence. And that's kind of how the foundation started, but the race has been going on for like 20 years. Before that happened, I think we're in our 25th year now. And Anne Marie and Gina kind of took it over, and they just kind of ran with it. The past 2 years it's raised more money than ever, and has just done a lot to help the people, So I thought that was interesting how my sister's death kind of brought this back, and here 25 years later, the people that don't even know her are still kind of participating and keeping her memory and her name alive. I just never thought I would have seen this, I thought that was pretty powerful. In fact, we had a meeting last night. So I thought that was, like I said, I thought that was great that people don't even know to keep her name going 25 years later.
I really, when I went to the memorial, we were walking around taking footage, and people kept coming up like, oh, Sintes, we know him, he's so nice. He helped me with this boat. He helped me with that boat.
That's nice. And you see, when my customers thank me when they're leaving, I always tell them, oh, I love that more than the money. And my crew says, well, I like both. I like the money too, but I think that's interesting that they really appreciate what I do for them. I kind of love that.
So I've heard Dave Sintes.
Correct.
Don't really know what he's done.
Dave was my father's younger brother. I think he was 13 years older than me, so people always thought he was my brother, even my father. And he was a boat builder, and I think when I was in high school, me and my dad, I got kicked out of high school, and I went to work for my uncle for a little while. And I learned how to build boats with him. In fact, I have a boat now that I built when I was 18 years old that I still have that I use as a boatyard towboat. He designed and built boats out of Seaflex, which was a material built by Seaman Fiberglass, and it was a product that you build a wood frame and you staple to the frames, and you build the boat upside down, and you turn the boat over, knock the frames out, and put stringers in the deck on, and you have like a one-off boat without making boats out of a mold. And God, he built over 300 boats that way. And what I liked about it is we'd get up at 4 in the morning, meet at his shop, and we'd go to Port Sulphur, Chalmette, people's garages, and we'd set boats up. And then we'd go back every couple of weeks and help them finish, and they'd do some of the work, and we'd do some of the work. And then sometimes, like on the weekend, the boatyard would shut down on a Saturday, and we'd start setting the boat up in one of the buildings, and by Tuesday, we'd put out a complete hull finished, except, you know, it still had to be outfitted and stuff. So on the weekend, we'd build a hull on a boat. And he was just I guess he was a genius when it came to building and designing boats. You know, he could look at a boat and know how to change it, know how to make it better, and improve what he did on a regular basis. He was also an ex-Vietnam vet, and I think that's why he wanted to die at 69 years old. And I think some of his complications was from the wounds he suffered in Vietnam. You know, he got shot, was missing 2 fingers, he was supposed to have lost his leg, they just stuck it back together and it grew, so he got to keep his leg. And but he took quite a number of hits. I remember him talking about how he got shot in Vietnam, and when he was laying on the ground, they opened fire around him so they could save him, but as they were crawling out to him, they kept shooting him while he was laying on the ground. And eventually they lifted him, they got him to a helicopter and they airlifted him, and it took him like a year he was like 190 pounds when he went in the Marines and 90 pounds when he came out. And you know, so he was lucky to be alive, and his attitude was, I'd have died in World War II, so I'm lucky to be here. Even when he started getting ill in health, because he died at 69 years old. This is odd too. His whole number started out with 1369, and I'm not going to tell you what it meant, but when he shot people in Vietnam, he'd always tell him that, but it meant unlucky, and you can use your imagination for the rest. And I just thought it was ironic that he died at 69 years old too, because every boat had 1369 and the whole number on it. So that was interesting that he checked out at 69, but he loved what he did. He taught me a lot of good work ethics and work skills and all. And everything in his life, just like my father's life, kind of revolved around boat building and in the boatyard. His trips had gone trips to Rockport to meet people and build boats, and build boats in Mexico, just all around the world. So he did a lot to promote boat building, to promote the boat industry. And he had a lot of good friends, a lot of fishermen that loved him and cared for him. And people would always tell me, your uncle's a genius, he's the smartest man I know. So I thought that was kind of interesting that people really looked up to him. And I felt lucky to have had him in my life. You know, he taught me a lot.
So we know that Lawrence, Dave, and you have all done like boat stuff?
Correct.
What have Judy and Jerry done?
My mother kind of has always been like the bookkeeper, the family bookkeeper for the boatyard, and then Aunt Judy was like Uncle Dave's bookkeeper, and kind of ran his books and stuff. So, and then Aunt Judy also looked into our family history in depth. So, like I said, she could tell you more about the family history than anybody I know.
Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you wanted me to ask?
Oh, God, not that I can think of. You know, I know right now my son is working in the store, and my sister's son is working in the boatyard. He came to me about maybe 12 years ago and asked for a job, and he said, my dad told me that you'd teach me how to work, because my nephew didn't have real good work ethics for a while. My mother was kind of panicking about it. And his dad used to always complain we'd be out when I wanted to go home because I had to go to work in the morning. Oh, I bet your dad made the same excuses to get out of having fun too. And it wasn't that I was getting out of having fun, my work was fun. I remember at one point when I was in high school, I sold tickets to a Styx concert to go work on a boat that was coming to the yard. And my friends' moms were like, what teenager would sell concert tickets to go to work on Saturday? And I told her I just love boats, and I'd rather go see boats than go to the concert. And then years later, I still got to see Styx anyway, like when I was in my 40s. So that was interesting that, as a teenager, it was more important to work than to go see concerts. And I kind of feel that way now.
What does your typical day look like?
Usually I get up at 7:17, and I raise hibiscus. So I go hang out with my hibiscus and water my hibiscus, do a little read to center myself, and I get to the boatyard about 10 minutes to 8. And most mornings, if I have boats to pick up at the crane, I try to get as many boats up as I can with the crane in the morning so my crew can start working on them and painting them. And then I do quotes and estimates, call customers, kind of keep the work coming in, run errands. What I find is like my errands times in my life parallels my grandfather's time. Like at 9 o'clock, he would run errands, and I'll run errands between 9 and 11, depending on, at 3 o'clock he'd go home. I don't go home at 3 o'clock, but but it's just interesting. We deal with a lot of the same businesses that he used to deal with, so it's interesting to see how my life almost parallels his life, even down to the times that I run errands. I usually get home around 6 o'clock, 6:30 every evening, and then go work out in the evening time. So, I love my job, but I love my home life too.
So you worked with your father, and now your son is working with you?
Correct,
Do you notice any differences in how you have to work around the yard?
Well, I guess I feel lucky that I think most families, the father would have stayed inside, because my father kind of stayed inside more than I did, whereas I stay outside a lot more than my son did. And I think my father was lucky to have me, because it let him grow the business, like grow the distributor business and the other things, whereas everything's grown now, so I don't have to spend time growing it. I can kind of hang out with the boats and play with the boats during the day while my son does the inside things that I'm not good at. I'm good at fixing boats and repairing boats and making things happen out there, but I don't think I'm good at ordering things and buying things. I remember me and my sister would always argue when we did the paint. I was like, well, I want to order a year's worth of paint. And she's like, well, no, we only got to order 3 months worth because you can't tie all your money up in paint. We need sandpaper, we need air conditioner equipment, we need this. I was like, but I don't want to sit down and do the order, Pam. I just want to go work. So she kind of taught me how to spread my money out and buy stuff in the distributor business in the store, so you don't have all your money wrapped up in paint or all your money wrapped up in sandpaper. And my son seems to be much better at that than I am. So I'm glad I have him, and that he likes the inside things and I like the outside things. And I like the hard work and he likes the mental work.
I'm going to open up to y'all. Do y'all have any questions?
Were you ever drunk at Rockery Inn?
No, I was drunk at West End. At some of the bars at West End Park I was drunk at a few times.
Brunnings?
Let's see, Federico's is one I remember, and Augie's Delaga.
Sure.
And there was this place called the Paddle Wheel, and I remember the Palace Saloon, and like pretty popular bands would come there, like Iron Butterfly, and bands that played more than just local. And
remember when the Meters, you could go see the Meters almost anywhere?
correct, yeah,
Yeah,
and the Top Cats, TQ and the Top Cats used to play out there a lot also.
Sure.
I really liked hearing about how the different generations of your family kind of picked up different aspects of the business. I just love how that.
That is interesting, because my uncle was a boat builder, my dad we repaired boats, and then my dad also grew out to the distributor business, and now my son is more in that line than repairing them.
Yeah. Now, when did you first start working with the boats?
I first started working as a kid. I'd always go to the boatyard after school, but when I was 13 years old, I got in a fight with 6 people, and I told them, 6 against 1, go back and get more people. So they pulled out a knife and stabbed me in the right bicep. And when I got out of the hospital, I thought, like any handicapped kid, my dad would take care of me. And instead, he gave me a job and charged me $40 a week to live at home. And so after that, it was on. I was working full time. And then part time, I'd go work with my uncle. On Saturdays and Sundays, and I would go, like I said before, we'd go out of town and build boats. So that was kind of when I started running the boatyard. Or working in the boatyard. By 18, I remember I was hiring people, and I had never been on like the other side of a job interview. I even remember like at 18 years old when I was building my boat in school, telling one of my teachers, well, you just teach school, I can build a boat. What else can you do? And I'm sure she wanted to choke me, but at 18, building the boat's a pretty big deal, And so my dad, I guess, tough love, giving me a job and all, is what got me interested in boats and kind of I was on my way to being what I am today, So I think getting stabbed was kind of a blessing. But what I remember too, when I was getting divorced, I was calling around for lawyers. And this one girl, asked me, what are you doing looking for a lawyer? You and Darlene are getting divorced? And I said, yeah, things aren't going good anymore. Well, I want to tell you something. Before you got stabbed, you were a real asshole. That was probably the best thing that ever happened to you. So naturally, I hired her because she told me like it was. And looking back, it was a good thing. You know, it was a good thing that happened at 13 because it kind of changed my thinking and made me a little kinder and a little more not as cocky, a little more humble. So, and my dad put me to work, and the rest was history. You know.
Your dad was dubious about you being stabbed, right? I mean, he thought, what an idiot when he got himself stabbed.
Well, my dad was a judo instructor in the Green Beret and all. So my dad and uncle, you know, they were more like, I remember I got in a fight in 6th grade one time, and I think the guy hit me in the nose or something. He says, you know, if you would have done this, he wouldn't have done that. So the next fight I got in there, like, oh, Steve's like a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. You know, so he kind of built a monster, and I guess he had to turn the monster off, you know. But I took judo from the time I was 7 till I was in my teen years. And what he should have told me was, you don't fight. And I remember years later, my son, somebody was picking on my son, and I told him what to do. And he looks at me, Dad, you're not supposed to fight. I said, wow, my son knows better than me. You know, my 13-year-old son is smarter than I am. So at least I raised my son better than I was raised, you know. And eventually, my dad and my friends drove that into my head too.
So when you started really taking the reins of the business, was there any changes that you made to the operations?
Well, I guess the one big change I made was we used to get there in the morning and plan in the morning. And Susan, she's been working there since I'm 13 years old. She recommended that we start planning everything in the nighttime. And that way you can kind of go home and forget about it. So what I do is for everybody that works for me in the evening, I read over all the customers' work list and we write down what everybody's going to be doing on their boats. And that way I know if I get a phone call in the middle of the night or something, I know what we're doing tomorrow. And when they get there, if I'm sick, they could just get started and know what to do. But what I find is it leaves your mind open for all the new stuff that comes at you during the day. You know, if you plan in the morning, you're kind of like, what did I forget? If you plan at night, you kind of have it in the bag. You know, everything's fresh in your mind when you plan. Then when they get there the next day, the new stuff is easy to take in. So I think that's kind of the only change I've implemented. Everything else was kind of running, you know, had been kind of perfected by the time I got there. So I guess that hard work made it easier for me to make small changes.
And Steve, I want to ask you about your ancestors are Spanish, do you know, Canarians?
The name is from Portugal. The Sintes name is Portuguese.
Yeah, sure.
Now, I don't speak Portuguese, I just speak English, but, you know, the name came from Portugal.
Your family is very stoic in there. And I don't mean stoic in the common use of the word like we think of it now as far as enduring hardship, but rather using the wisdom acquired from one generation to the next.
Okay.
You know, like even the stabbing story.
Uh-huh.
That's your dad applying some really old ideas to your behavior that had a really positive effect on you.
Absolutely, and I thought what he did, then I kind of thought he was mean. Now I think it was the ultimate act of love, you know.
It's wisdom, man.
Yeah, and it was what I needed at the time, you know, especially 40 years later when my friend tells me, oh, you were an asshole before you got stabbed. Well, there's this Kenny Chesney song called Boats, and I don't know if y'all have ever listened to it, but pull it up one day, and it kind of reminds me of my life, you know. Mm-hmm. I just feel so lucky that I was born into this, you know. I mean, God couldn't have put me in a better place.
Sure, man.
Did you ever consider working in any other business, or did you ever?
I never did. You know, like as a kid, fantasies I had was like being a fireman or a priest, or, you know, something like that. But I never really, you know, as I got older, I never thought about doing anything else. You know, during the week I get to test run different boats. When new boats come to town, I get to operate them before their owner does. When somebody buys a new boat, I get to experience them, you know, seeing it for the first time or hanging out on it or test running it with them. So it's nice, you know. I mean, I've probably operated over 300 different boats in my lifetime. Not a lot of people can say that, you know. I have a test run on a boat this week that I'm looking forward to.
And to be on the water.
Right.
What a gift.
About a week ago, I was riding my bike in the harbor and I seen a customer and he stopped and I was thinking, just be positive, act like he could take him. So he wanted the boat compound in the wax. He backed up and talked to me, can you come find and wax my boat? I said, yeah. And he says, well, I'm going out of town. How much will you charge me to bring it back to the slip? So, wow, $90 and I get a boat ride too. So, I told him I'd charge him what I charged him to bring it back to the slip, and we did the detail work, and then I got a boat ride taking it back to the slip with my nephew, so it's kind of nice because most of my good jobs always end with a boat ride, which makes it really, really nice, I get to enjoy the boat as much as the customer does after making it look pretty.
And do you get many speedboats, many like cigarette big boats?
Not a lot of the cigarette boats, but I do a lot of power boats, and I do a lot of sailboats. Like I just had a friend who bought I think a 36-foot power boat that has like three bedrooms in it, two bathrooms, and does 31 miles an hour. And it was fun teaching him how to back the boat up in my yard and bringing the boat back to South Shore Harbor with him, I almost took a picture of one of the pastors at my church works on the lakefront, and I almost sent a picture of him from the lakefront as I was going past where he works at, because he always claims that he's jealous of me in his sermons in church. And I'm gonna pick on you, Steve, so I like the fact that he knows I have a good life too.
And I'm gonna guess you don't fish.
I don't fish. No.
I know it.
I just don't like sitting around waiting for things to happen. I like making things happen. Like on my weekends, I work out and I mountain bike in the swamp in the spillway. So, those are, if people ask me, why don't you mountain bike on the street? Or why don't you ride on the street? And it's like, well, because it's just an easy bike ride. In the swamp, sometimes I have to walk my bike back to the truck, And like you can't sit down because you can't sit in 1 inch of water, So when you're worn out, you're worn out. So you really have to work to have fun. So fishing's kind of boring for me. Now my Uncle Dave, the boat builder, he fished a lot.
You've mentioned that you have a great rapport with a lot of your customers. Is there a typical customer for you? Do you have customers you really enjoy working with?
I guess the people who are passionate about their boats are the ones I like working for the most. For 4th of July, Marcus Ware, he's a good customer of mine, and he invited me to his party at his house in English Turn. And when we were there, I had just recently was test running his boat, and somebody actually sent me a video of me running the boat. So I was at the table, and I showed him the video of the boat. And my girlfriend that looks at me, she says, oh, you're like a pediatrician. You have all your babies in your phone. And it just so happened we were at the table, Marcus is a brain surgeon, and we were at the table with his team, and he says, we're going to all have to go on the boat, just our team, and use the boat one day. And I thought it was interesting that, of all the people I could have sat with, I sat at the table with him and his surgical team. And I think his personal trainer is a part of that team. And I met the trainer when he came to the yard. The people with Gwen and Richard Vogel, I met them through Marcus, and they became good customers of mine. And it's just interesting how it just seems to snowball. Dave Irwin, the guy that owns Zephyr, he runs the J30 website and all. And they have, J30s is a class of boats that they race. And they have a regatta where all the J30s come from other cities and race in the city. And it happens here every 2 years. And I think the yacht club has a little program going where they'll fund I think up to 5 boats coming here, and I'll launch the boats and step the mast on them and take them apart when they leave town. And this is something that happened just because I became friends with Dave when he bought Zephyr here. And when we were rebuilding that boat, he documented the boat on the J30 website, and I didn't know none of that was going on until after we finished the boat. So I was just treating him like I do everybody else, and because of that, I got that gift. I love that little video you did, Madison. In the video, that dark blue, the dark green boat was a boat that was built in the 60s that we rebuilt in the 80s. And then the blue boat on the trailer, one night, I was just worn out from the summer. And that particular year, I think a boat almost fell on me and I almost lost my leg. And then I was T-boned in the boat like 6 months later. No, actually a month later. I was T-boned in another boat accident. And this was like in March and April. And then around September, I was worn out and didn't want to go sailing that night, so I just went home and hung out with my hibiscus. And around 9 o'clock, my phone rings, and Zephyr was in a head-on collision with the green boat that was the light green boat that was in your video. And I remember thinking, wow, it's a good thing I went home that night. Otherwise, it would have been 3 boat accidents in 1 year. And, not that I mind, but you can only take so much adrenaline, and I had kind of just recovered from the boat, almost taking my leg off. So I didn't want to go, I wanted to be in control of my life. I mean, just race sailboats, you're not in control of your life. But I thought it was interesting that the two boats in the picture, one was the beginning of my life, and one was the beginning of me getting sane, not going sailing in the night when I was worn out. But the blue boat, they started the race, and they started ahead of time. And instead of like turning off to the port side, to starboard side, they made a U-turn right into the pack of boats. And they hit Zephyr in a head-on collision. And both boats were damaged fairly bad. It took me about a month to fix Zephyr. And, so it was quite an interesting little collision. And another thing that was interesting was they have drone shots of the accident happened. So if you want that, I could probably get that for you. They just happened to have a drone overhead that day.
And did I interrupt the question you were going to ask?
No, go ahead.
No, right when I cut.
So if I'm hearing you right, you work with your family members, but also hire people from the community that you meet.
Correct.
How is that dynamic between, working with your family, working with people outside of the family?
Well, it's interesting to get to know the different personalities because I feel like I've hired the same personalities over and over again. I just recently rehired one guy that worked for me when I was like 18 years old. And he worked for me on and off over the years, and he recently came back, and I'm amazed at how talented he is. I taught him a lot when he worked for me, but he also got more talented working for other people too. So the dynamics of seeing how people grow when they've worked for you and you thought you made them the best they can be and they come back better. And also hiring new people that don't know anything about boats and teaching them skills. Then I've had other people I've hired that could fix tools I couldn't fix. So they've taught me how to fix tools and repair machines, and I've taught them how to work on boats. So it's interesting to see how we kind of trade skills. I guess a while back I had hired a guy. Every once in a while you get some bad apples. And one of my mechanics went to give him some advice. And he got pissed off at my mechanic and threatened to kill my mechanic in front of me. And I had to fire him. And he's telling me, well, you're a big guy, you shouldn't be afraid of me. You're threatening to kill people. And, with my sister being murdered and all, threatening to kill somebody is a little more different. It's real for me, He might have been angry. So I told Susan, I said, well, I'm not going to let him know I'm not taking him back here. I'm going to tell him to go home and think about it, but I'm afraid if I tell him I'm firing him today, he's going to flip out in the office. So he left, and I told him, I called him about 15 minutes after he left, and he went nuts over the phone. Started cursing me out, telling me, you don't do this, you don't do this. We agreed that he told me this, and because he told me this, a man would do that. We didn't agree on that. I said, you got some really weird fantasies about how real world goes. This isn't kindergarten. I said, I'm here to have people work, not to have people get angry and threaten to beat my mechanic up. I got 10 years invested into this man. I don't want anything happening to him or me. So needless to say, sometimes you get some bad apples when you hire and fire a lot of people. And most of the time I get really good, talented people. But this one here just left a bad taste in my mouth.
That's great. It's wonderful to see how much you're sharing and spreading this skill set that's been handed down to you all these years. Is there any advice you received from your father or grandfather about running the business that has really stuck with you?
Well, you have to be there all the time. You have to be there. If you're not there, things don't happen. People don't work the same when you're not there. And there's things I know or advice I know I can give them to make things go better. One of my customers tells this story, and he went away for a while but came back. He tells the story. He says, whenever I'm in other yards, I tell stories. He said, me and Steve were walking, and we were going to look at the boat. We were going to look at my boat. And on the way to my boat, he heard a noise. He said, that noise shouldn't be coming from that boat. Something's going on. And he ran over to the boat, and when he came back, he told me that they were using the wrong kind of tool in the boat, but that he was amazed that just from me walking with him, talking to him, I could hear that something wasn't right. And I guess I know everything that's going on in my yard. So if somebody's using the wrong tool, I even know that by the sound of what's going on in the boat. And I just thought that was interesting. And he'd let me know, I've tried other people. Sometimes because I didn't like your prices. But you're worth every dime. And in fact, I just finished doing a $12,000 job for him on his 1984 Taunton. So it's interesting that he left and came back and let me know he was mad at me. He was mad at me because of my prices. But after having some people do things on his boat, he's happy to be back.
Now, I just love imagining you, walking around and hearing these different sounds and just having that knowledge to jump in and know what's right and what's wrong. That makes me think about the type of tools and technology you're using. How has the craftsmanship, the technology changed around the work that you do?
Well, I know like in the old days, we'd use sanding machines that would throw dust all over the place. And every once in a while, DEQ or EPA would show up and, make me hang tops and clean the dust up. Now I use sanders that suck the dust up, vacuum sanders, and catch them in a bag. And then the other thing was like the machines are a lot lighter, so they were hard on your shoulders and hard on the people, plus you were breathing dust. Then as far as like the battery pack tools and all go, we always had to run cords to boats and all. Now we don't have to run cords with the 12 volt and the 18 volt battery operated tools. So that made a big difference also. And I guess equipment's more compact and smaller, so that makes it easier to get on boats and stuff like that. As far as some of the technology goes, so a lot of the engines have computers and all now. So you have to buy computer equipment to diagnose them, but as opposed to before, it was just changing parts. You look at that part, okay, it's bad, change it. So in that respect, it's changed a lot, and I think it's all for the better. It's improving. I especially love the vacuum sanders. I think that was the biggest asset because the boatyard was always dirty, and now even the dirtiest job isn't that dirty of a job anymore. And it's easy to hire people to do that. That was the hardest positions to fill because nobody wanted to eat bottom dust all day. Now with the vacuum sanders, it's easy to get people to want to do that.
I loved hearing about this journal that it was your grandfather's journal?
Correct. It was my grandfather's journal.
Can you tell me how you got it and anything that really sticks out to you? I know we heard a couple of great anecdotes, but I just...
I think they were cleaning up his house, his old house, and they found it like behind the wall in the house. And then my Aunt Judy eventually gave it to me, and I don't know what made her give it to me, but I guess the story. I guess what stands out in it was that he always went home at 3 o'clock every day because we run a business. Would you want me to tell that story? Okay, I was always told, and it was driven in my head. You got to be there from the time it opens to the time it closes. You got to be at work all the time. And every day I'd read in the book that I went home at 3 o'clock to take a nap. I think it said your crew's working and you're going home at 3 o'clock. So they had 7 children. And then my grandfather died at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 3:30 in the afternoon. And it turns out he was home having sex with his wife, and he died. So years later, after reading the book for 20 years later, my dad explained to me why my grandfather died. I said, oh, so he had been going home to have sex with his wife, which I thought was really sweet. But I still couldn't believe he was leaving the boatyard unattended. But they had 7 children, and his wife worked at Fitzgerald's till 12 o'clock at night. So he'd go home and have sex with her, bring her to work at Fitzgerald's, which was within walking distance, but he'd drive her there. Then at midnight he'd pick her up from work and have dinner with her. But he got up at 6 in the morning, so I thought that was neat that he'd stay up and drive to Fitzgerald's, 50 yards away, and bring her home. And all the men in my family talked about how hard my grandfather was. All the women in my family talked about how kind and loving he was. So it was interesting to see that people had 2 different opinions of him. So I think in the journal, the fact that he went home every day at 3 o'clock, that's what stood out to me the most and, blew me away the most. But then when I heard the reason why, I could kind of accept it. It's like, okay, well, he loved his wife. That's interesting.
And Fitzgerald's was the one that was out over the water.
Correct, right.
A big restaurant, kind of bar restaurant.
Right, bar and restaurant, but it was really popular,
Yeah.
And my grandmother worked there for years. But, her shift would start, I guess, at 4 o'clock. And it was interesting to see, drove the old lady to work, picked the old lady up from work, like he was going to the French Quarter, And the other thing, like in the book, you see, I drove to Bucktown to get supplies. I drove to Canal Street to get supplies. Like leaving West End was like leaving the country, Well, I remember too, sometimes, one time he was going to Bucktown and some guy was in a ditch. So he went back to work and got the winch truck and pulled the guy out the ditch. So little stories like that, little tidbits like that were kind of interesting. One time in the book, I guess it was in the 60s, he talked about somebody burning a cross in the baseball park across the street from their house. You know, which just kind of gave us an idea of the sign of the times. So those were the things that kind of stood out to me in the book. You know, with the 3 o'clock, going home at 3 o'clock, because we had to be there all the time. That just blew me away. I was like, why are you leaving work at 3 o'clock? Every day when I read it, you know.
So you're 13 when you start working.
Correct.
With your father. What was the dynamic like when you were first working with your father? What was a typical day like when you first started working with him?
Oh, I remember, like, he'd knock on my bedroom door and get me up. It's like, I think I get to work for 7:30, maybe 7:15, and then he'd make me sweep him out the store every morning. And I guess he did that while he was getting the crew started. And then after that, he'd you know, come give me my job. And at first I would mostly like sand and paint bottoms. So that's what I started doing mostly, sand and paint bottoms. And we had 55-gallon drums of garbage. And I'd empty the 55-gallon drums of garbage. And like I remember the grown men couldn't throw the 55-gallon drums in the garbage can. But since I was doing it for so long, I didn't know better. I didn't know I wasn't supposed to be able to pick up that kind of weight. And then we also go up on mast. And that always had me crank people up on mast. And since I was always strong from lifting the garbage cans, I always did like the hard work. And I remember the first time they put me up a mast, I was afraid of heights. I was like, never mind, I want to crank. Put me on the ground, I want to crank. So I always kind of, I guess I preferred doing the harder jobs because it kept my feet on the ground. And then as time went on, I learned to work the crane. Then I learned how to paint like topside paint. Then I learned how to do fiberglass work. Then I learned how to do engine work, put engines in boats. Then I learned how to stand mast up and do rigging work. And I just learned everything just a little at a time. And I guess since I was always around it, it was easy to learn. I had an uncle who ran a machine shop that did our machine work. But at nighttime when I call and talk to him, he'd tell me, you know, when you're around the boatyard and you're not real busy or you're helping people, pay attention to how things are put together. Pay attention to how the bilges are. And like when I was like 7 and 8, they'd bring me to the boatyard to crawl like in areas I couldn't get in and run wires. And even my uncle that ran the machine shop would tell me, when you're crawling in these holes, you won't be able to get there forever. Pay attention to how the boats are put together. You get to see things I can't see anymore. And it was interesting, like as a kid, looking around going, oh yeah, wow, this is neat. But even as a grown-up, I've gotten in holes the size of microwave doors where people came in and they're like, where are you? I'm in here, you know? And when they was like, how did you get in here? I just turned and got in, I don't know, you know? And so I can still get in places you're not supposed to get in and see how the boats are put together, but it brings me back to my childhood when I first started doing that. So he's like, I'm envious of, when he talks about envy, I'm envious of Steve, you're not supposed to be envious of people, you know? But I always tell him, I'm envious of your relationship with your wife, you know?
Yeah. Everybody's got something.
Right.
When are you doing your boat test this week?
The first warm day we had.
Oh.
The first warm day when the lake's calm, you know. And we got it filled up with gas. Boat probably takes 300 gallons of gas. So we're going to go fill it up with gas, and then we're going to go test run it.
How far do you go out on the lake?
Usually I go like down to Pontchartrain Beach or UNO Arena,
Oh, okay.
and then back. Sometimes I go to the airport.
So beautiful out there.
Oh no, when I'm out there, I can't believe it's like, this is really my job.
Yeah. So we were talking a little bit about your early days working with your father, and when did you start to see the dynamic switch to where you were no longer, you know, the young rapscallion to a true business partner?
Well, what I remember when I was young and I'd tell customers something, they'd kind of look at me, then I'd go ask my dad. And I was like, why are they asking you? I told them the same thing you did. Oh, you look too young. You look too young for them to believe you. When you start looking older, they'll believe you. And then I guess probably by the time I was 38, they believed me. But I was running the yard probably in my 20s. And I remember like I had a hard time saying I was the boss. But my father was also out there a lot. And if we'd be telling the same person what to do, I'd usually leave and go do another job. And he'd be like, well, why did you leave? I just came out to give you some advice. But the people don't like they don't like two bosses. So if you're going to run that job, I'll go run another job. So we never really argued. He just would always let me know, I just came out here to help you, but I knew people didn't like two bosses. And then I think for the most part, we just kind of stay out of each other's way like that. And then if I go start taking over a job that he was running, he'd tell me, is it me or you? Who's on, me or you? I'm sorry, you take over, you know, or he'd tell me, no, I'll go inside, you can do it. So we kind of always have an amicable way of backing out, you know. Nobody would kind of step on the other one's toes if the other one says, hey, you know, who's running the job? I don't want to confuse the help. And he'd always tell me, we never want to do that. We never want to both be telling somebody else what to do, because then it confuses them. They don't know who to be loyal to. So we never really had an argument as far as that went. So in that dynamics, we never got in each other's way, I don't think.
That's amazing to hear. Were there any other challenges that you faced while you were working with him?
Sometimes when I'd hire people, if he didn't like them, he'd run them off. Or what I remember too, like when I was married, and I'd go on vacation, I'd go like to boat shows and stuff. My wife would tell me, when you're working, it looks like you're screwing off. But when you leave, everybody looks like they're in total distress, even your dad. So what I thought was, I had developed such a skill in like knowing all my pieces that it wasn't stressful for me. But my dad didn't know the pieces as much as I did once I took over the yard. So he struggled getting to know the personalities and what to do. And then everybody else got lost too, because they weren't doing the things that they were really talented in. You know, I knew their skills and where to put them so that they would be happy and I could get the most out of them. And he didn't, so it kind of rattled him a little bit. But he wasn't doing it on purpose. He just didn't know it was good. But it was interesting when my wife told me, it looks like you're screwing off all day long, but things go so much smoother when you're here. So I thought, wow, I finally made it full circle. You know, I finally learned how to run a business. And that's another thing I remember thinking as a kid. Like, I was always like into going to the gym and swimming and doing athletic things. And my dad and Uncle Dave would always take people out and entertain them with dinner and stuff. I was like, I don't like going out here. I don't like doing this. I like being in the boatyard. So I ride my bike around the harbor and get jobs. And I think it's interesting how I just developed my personality, a way of getting work, as opposed to I don't like going out to dinner. So it's interesting that I developed it to fit me, you know. And then also a very similar to wear a shirt. So like the girl I dated now, I've been wearing a shirt around her. Like we went to the wooden boat show, people kept coming up to me, oh, you have a shirt on, you have a shirt on. And she's like, I hear that all the time. Why do you wear a shirt when you're with me? Like, I don't know, I just feel different around you. You know, maybe as I'm getting older, I'm getting more respectful. But everywhere I go now, people are like, why you have a shirt on? Why you have a shirt on? So it's interesting to see how at 58, I'm finally maybe growing up a little bit.
When did your dad really start stepping down and letting you take the reins, and was that a hard thing for him to let go of?
Oh, he still struggles. He still struggles with it. And I don't know, it kind of happened so gradually. I guess as the store and the distributive business developed, he just kind of, I don't know if he lost touch or he gradually gave him something else to control instead of me in the boatyard, you know, because I mean, the boatyard was his baby, that was what he knew. And as he started building the store and going on road trips and trying to build the clientele for that, it kind of just left me to run the boatyard without him, you know, putting his finger on it. I mean, he still tells me I need to hire more people and, you know, things that he thinks I need to do. So he still kind of tries to run it from a distance, but for the most part, he stays out of my way unless I'm struggling. You know, if I'm struggling, he tells me what he thinks I need to do. And sometimes I do it, sometimes I just can't. You know, it's just hard. It's hard. It's easier to say you need to do this than it is to do it. You know.
I could just talk to you all day. I'm loving this. But I don't want to monopolize your time. Madison, you have anything come in mind that you want to finish up with?
So the business has been here for 50 years. What do you hope the next 50 look like?
I hope we just. I don't necessarily want to grow, but I hope we keep staying the same. You know, I hope we keep staying the same. Keep repeat customers. I guess I'd like to see Pam's foundation and all keep growing also, you know. But I don't think we need to change much. I like my clientele. I like the fact that we're known for doing good work and being on time. So I guess I'd just like to see us carry on for another 50 years a war.